is Rachel, and today I'm bringing you the birth year book tag. So I wasn't tagged by anybody, but I felt like I hadn't done a book tag in a little while, and I thought that would be kind of a fun thing to do. So I looked up some tags, and this is the first one I found that sounded kind of interesting. So this is all about things relative to the year you were born. So first up is, have you read any books that have been published the year you were born? And yes, I have. I have like a real love-hate with these. This is often a prompt in reading challenges, and I feel like I've read just about all the books published the year I was born that I want to read. So I was born in 1985. So some of the books that I've read that were published in 1985. And so first up is probably the most famous book, and that is The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. This is a very dark, speculative look at what the future could look like if somebody takes over the United States and very much regresses society, particularly women, and it's not a great look. They made this into a Hulu show, so this one is probably the most prolific title on my list, but I have read that. The next one is a picture book that I absolutely loved. I got to meet this author when I was little, and my love of books goes back all the way to when I was born, basically. And that is If You Give a Mouse a Cookie. I love these. There's a lot more in the series, but essentially, if you've never read these books, our main character, this little boy, has a mouse in his house, and the mouse asks for a cookie. And the boy says, okay, and gives him a cookie. Well, of course, then he wants some milk. And every time he gives him what he asks for, that leads to something else. And they get through all sorts of shenanigans in the book before eventually he asks for a cookie again. And like I said, there's a bunch of books in this series, and they're all just absolutely adorable. I love reading this with the kids and letting them kind of create their own version of this. If you give a blank, and then trying to have them come up with like a sequential series where it would come back. It's a lot of fun. But that one came out in 1985, as well as another very famous picture book, and that's The Polar Express. This one was made into a movie, and a lot of schools use the Polar Express still as like a theme during the Christmas time. If you haven't read this picture book or seen the movie or been aware of the plot somehow, you must be living under a rock. But essentially, there is a secret magical train system that will pick children up the night before Christmas and take them to the North Pole, and where Santa is before he takes off delivering gifts, and he gives out the first gift of Christmas. Our main character ends up getting a bell from one of the reindeer, but alas, he has a hole in his pocket and loses the bell. So he's very disappointed when he makes it home, and he's lost his bell, but it turns up under the tree the next day, and the bell ends up being something that only those who truly believe in Santa can hear. So eventually a lot of the characters can't hear the bell anymore, and this is probably my mom's favorite picture book ever. We read it every Christmas. 1985 publication date, though. The next one is The Vampire Lestat. I believe this is the third book in Anne Rice's vampire series, and I believe this is the last one I've read in the series. I don't remember a ton of what happened in this book, but Lestat is one of her main vampire characters. We meet him in the first book in the series, Interview with a Vampire, which has also been turned into a movie with Brad Pitt and Tom Cruise. So you probably know Interview with the Vampire, but this one was specifically about Lestat, which would have been Tom Cruise's character. Another book that came out that has recently been making the popular rounds is Mouse, the first volume that came out in 1985. This is by Art Spiegelman. It's a comic that depicts the Holocaust with the Nazis being portrayed as cats and the Jewish people being portrayed as mice. And it is gut-wrenching. It's a really hard read, but it's very important, and it's been banned a lot lately. So if you have not read Mouse, you need to go read it. Don't let people tell you what to read. Go read those banned books. So this is one you should go read. There's actually 2 volumes that wrap up the whole story, and it's going to be a hard read, but it's going to be worth it. And the symbolism of everything in there is just really astounding. So go read Mouse by Art Spiegelman. And last but not least is B is for Burglar. This is the second book in the Kinsey Malone Alphabet series by Sue Grafton. I cannot believe this one came out the year I was born, because I've actually been kind of slowly working my way through this series, so it just seems insane that it was written that long ago. And the second one, it wasn't even started that year. So that's very, very interesting to me. But yeah, I've read, I think, through like H maybe in the series, and it goes all the way to Y. So next up, we're talking books published the year I graduated from high school, which would have been the year I was 18, and that's 2003. I've read a few, and I have a few that are on my immediate TBR list for this year. So the first book that I've read that was published in 2003 is The Da Vinci Code. I'm sure a lot of people have read that and they know what that's about, so I won't go into too much detail, but that was published the year I was 18. That seems insane. Another one is The Second Summer of the Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants by Anne Brashears. The first one, The Sisterhood of the Traveling Pants, was actually made into a movie, so I think this one is fairly well known. I do think that for the most part these would probably hold up today, just being about, you know, a core group of friends who, as they get older, they just start drifting apart naturally because they all have different wants and needs and end up in different places. So I think this would be an interesting one to revisit. I know we do have it on our shelves still in the library. And then the last one that I've read from 2003 was The Devil in the White City by Erik Larson, and that just stunned me because we actually got to go see Erik Larson a couple years ago, and he's probably one of my mom's favorite authors. So the fact that that book was written seemingly so long ago, that just is insane to me. But I did read that one. You should read that one. It's very interesting. It's all about the lead up and the full event of the Chicago World Fair, including the serial killer that was active during that time, H.H. Holmes. So very, very interesting book. There's two that were published in 2003 that I'm very interested in reading, hopefully this year. One is Stiff by Mary Roach, and the other is Club Dead. This is one of the books in the Sookie Stackhouse series, which I'm trying to participate in the read-along of this year. So those are two that I might get to this year, published in 2003. Next up is from the last 10 books, have you read any that were published the year you were born? I haven't read any published from 1985, but I've read one that was, I only read one. In the last 10, I've only read one published before I was born, and that is Pride and Prejudice. I reread that on the anniversary of the publication date in January, and that obviously was published well over 200 years ago, so I'd say that's a pretty safe bet. Published before 1985. I don't tend to gravitate towards books before 1985. I really don't tend to gravitate towards books before 2000 anymore, especially with like anything modern. The technology and a lot of the references are just so out of date that it's sometimes not as relatable. It's not as enjoyable because it's harder to put yourself in the character situation. Historical fiction probably would still be fine. I mean, not much changes looking back, I guess. But yeah, I don't tend to pick up books from that far ago. I have too many books from more recently that I haven't read that I want to, so I don't really venture back that far. The next question was, what is your favorite movie that came out in 1985? I wrote down a few, and these were just really funny questions because looking back at the movies was just wild. The memories that come back associated with these movies is just so funny. So I went ahead and wrote down 4. One that I wouldn't say is one of my favorites, but it's probably one of the biggest movies of 1985, and that was Back to the Future. I've seen it. It's fine. It's probably not one of my favorite ones though. But I did make note just because I did not know that came out in 1985. One that people may not know is Red Sonja. I remember watching that. I would never have thought of that movie again, but I was looking through movies that came out the year I was born, and I saw the cover and immediately remembered this. I used to watch this all the time when I was little. I had like a little rocking horse that I would ride while I was watching it, pretending that I was Red Sonja. That's so embarrassing to admit, but yeah, I love that movie. Another one that I definitely watched several times was Pee-wee's Big Adventure. I don't even know what that movie was about anymore, but I definitely remember Pee-wee Herman. The movie Clue came out in 1985. That is a hoot. That's hilarious. I still like that movie though. And then another one is The Breakfast Club. I mean, who doesn't know about The Breakfast Club? I did make note of 2 other movies. One that I looked up to see the date was Ghostbusters, because I remember my mom and dad telling me that they tried to go see that several times while my mom was pregnant, but they couldn't stay because my mom was getting sick because of the popcorn smell. So I think they tried to go like 2 or 3 times and they never got to watch it. So they had to wait until it came out for like a rental to watch. And then the other one I noted was Dirty Dancing. That's my favorite movie, but that came out in 1987, so very close to my birth year, but that is still my absolute favorite movie. And then last but not least, our favorite movies from 2003, when I would have been 18 and graduated from high school. This was wild. So first up is How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days. I cannot believe that was published in 2003, but I do remember going to see it. I remember watching it. I remember chatting about it with my friends. Another one, I have to say, I'm going to interject this right now. It wasn't published in 2003. It actually came out in 2002, but it was Sweet Home Alabama. And the reason I remember that is because our homecoming game, my senior year, got rained out. And we all decided we still want to do something that Friday, so we went to see Sweet Home Alabama. I just think that is so wild to think back about these things, like to have these memories associated with these movies. But anyway, I wrote down several others, so I'm just going to keep going. Another one that I watched and really liked, it was super dark, was Mystic River. That was originally a book that I never read. I just watched the movie. There was one called Down with Love that was so weird and bizarre, but I loved it. Johnny English. Oh, Johnny English. It had Mr. Bean in it, and it was very like a comic version of James Bond with Mr. Bean, and fantastic. Love Actually came out that year, and The Italian Job, where they stole the cars and like the heist. And oh wait, no, they didn't steal the cars. They stole the money. They were in those little Mini Coopers. Man, that made me want a Mini Cooper so bad back then. But that had like Marky Mark and Charlize Theron in it, I think. And then School of Rock was that year. What? I can't believe that was that long ago, or maybe even that recently ago. It just doesn't seem like that should have been my senior year, one way or the other. That's the one with Jack Black where he is like a substitute teacher. How to Deal. That was one with Mandy Moore that I was obsessed with for some reason. But I think that was actually a combination of 2 books that Sarah Dessen wrote, if I'm not incorrect on that, but I think. What a wild journey. So if you have any comments about any of this, if you want to tell me more about maybe your stuff, let me know down below what would be appropriate for you based on your age. I'd love to hear this and walk down memory lane with you. So let's talk birth years and culture then, I guess, down in the comments. And thank you so much for watching. I'll see you again in another video soon. Bye for now.